General Odom, General Scales, and General McCaffrey, would you agree, or what is your take on the ability of the Sunni neighbors to play a more constructive role and, in fact, to change the dynamics within Iraq itself so that we can redeploy in a way that is sensible and demand sort of, General Zinni's talked about this a lot, a different security arrangement for the region itself, which we haven't really tried to negotiate. Could you comment? That'll be my last question because we're out of time.
Yes, my comment on that would be that I think it's unrealistic to think you're going to come out of this slowly. And I think it's unrealistic to think you're going to avoid chaos and you're going to train any forces there that are going to work to your ends. That you're absolutely right that you've got to change the dynamics. The only thing that will change the dynamics is an unambiguous U.S. beginning its withdrawal, and pretty hastily. And I would advocate move personnel before you move materiel. They'll string this withdrawal out for a year or two or three, dragging all the material out. We've just made that infeasible by staying as long as we are.
Sir, if
I don't think that these people are going to come in and help us on the way out. But when they see you going out, they'll start listening to you about what's going to be there. And until you start that, all this other talk about how we're going to do it in small steps and easily just are kind of beside the point. General McCaffrey and I were speaking beforehand. I have for some time wondered if Baghdad would end up looking like Bin Phu one of these days. If you remember that, maybe you're not old enough to remember when the French were trapped at Dien Bien Phu and lost a big part of their army deep inside Vietnam. And I think you need to start taking that scenario into account. The president, and I even hear it on this committee, think there's a choice that doesn't exist. You're not going to get out leaving order. It's inexorable. The question is merely the price. Every year we've stayed, the price has gotten higher. Staying another 6 months won't lower the price. And let me just end by saying, I said something I'd like to reemphasize in my testimony. Victory in Iraq is a elusive matter, and it's not really a point that's major to our interest. Our interest, and I remember this being in the Carter White House and planning for the Persian Gulf Security Framework, has always been, at least since the 1950s, regional stability. Our policies the last 3 or 4 years have been destabilizing the region. If we want to stabilize it, the first thing we have to do is reverse the policy we have right now. Then there's some possibility of getting it back. So I emphasize that you don't have any other choices until you start out.
Now, there's no question at all from what I've heard today that all of you say that because of circumstances, we're going to have to withdraw. I mean, we're going to have to withdraw from Iraq. It's got to be done. Now, the issue is, how is it going to be done? Last year, several of us tried to get this administration to agree to an agreement where we would reduce the surge troops and then come back to us and lay out a plan on how they would reconstitute our involvement in Iran. We almost had enough votes to get it done, and we failed because of a date of when it was supposed to happen. The question is, do we just let this thing meander down the stream, trust the administration, and let it go, or does this Congress, does this Senate start to take some action in regard to this situation? Now, they're going to come back to us, and they're going to ask for more money. We have never said, in order to get the money, we want to know what the plan is in terms of the withdrawal. And what I've heard today is it's not a bad idea if they knew for sure that we were going to withdraw. For sure, I think it also, when I was in Egypt, I talked with their foreign minister. They are concerned. The Saudis are concerned. The other neighbors are concerned. And if they know we're on our way out, don't you believe that because they're concerned about what's going to happen in the region, that they're going to come to the table and start exercising as much leverage as they can on the Sunnis and on the Shiites to say, let's work this out? And the other thing is that we may have a civil war, but my attitude is we may have a civil war anyhow. I mean, regardless of what we do. This Mr. Sadr, 4 or 5 years ago, I said, or 3 years ago, I said, this guy wants to be the next Ayatollah of Iraq. His family studied his history. He was out of commission for about 6 months, and people said he's no longer involved. I heard that from some responsible people in the administration. And he said, you know what I thought? I said, he's in Iran upgrading his religious qualifications so that he puts himself in a position where when Sistani's gone, he may be the guy that runs the country. So the point I'm making is, what action should we take to get this thing to happen? Well, we have an administration who basically says, stay out of our way, trust us, we're going to handle that. What should we do as a member of the United States Senate to get this thing back on track? Because I believe this, if we wait and let this thing meander down the stream, it's going to be a lot worse than if we take action now to do something about it. I'll never forget when I was governor of Ohio, and the legislators said to me, you shouldn't make the cuts. I said, we're in trouble deeply here. We've got to make the cuts. He said, you don't have to do it. I started to make the cuts. I said, if you don't start making the cuts now, when you finally have to do it, it's going to be a lot worse. I'd like all of your reactions.
You know, I applaud everything you've said, and I didn't even know some of the fiscal detail, and I'm glad to learn that. I've been asked many times, not only by members of the Senate, but also House members, what do we do, what do we do? I've suggested the Constitution says you have two powers, the budget and impeachment. Now, you pass budgets and the president turns them down or won't let you get one through. There's one other thing you can do with the money leverage. You can just refuse to appropriate a bill or to pass a bill for him to veto. So if you want to bring this to a halt, it's in the power of this Congress.
Does anybody think that we should just stay the course that we're at right now and then let the next administration come in and pick up the baton and deal with it? Barry?
Well, it's an odd situation. By the way, the last time I was over here, Senator Biden asked me to testify. I was pretty strong in my rebuke of Congress. Under Article 1 of the Constitution, you have the responsibility of raising support an Army and Navy. You have the treaty power, the impeachment power, the power of the purse, on and on. And I think Congress has been entirely missing at the debate. The Democrats, and I'm nonpartisan, the Democrats have been missing in action, fearful of being contaminated as lacking patriotism and courage. And the Republican Party stayed with Secretary Rumsfeld when he was leading us over the edge of a cliff. So I would want you to be introspective in your own role in this. We've had lonely voices. Senator Biden has certainly been one of them from the start, Senator Hagel and others. But I think it's time for Congress to act, and I cannot imagine that the war will, first of all, the American people don't support continuation of the current strategy. It's over. And therefore, Congress will soon reflect that reality. And I think Congress does have to step up. But in the short term, there won't be, nobody is going to step forward and tell the president, draw down to 5 brigades by the time you leave office. It's just not going to happen. So what we do want is the next administration, and I think Michelle's comment, bipartisan, is the key. This shouldn't be a partisan matter. This is, you know, the American armed forces at risk. This is our national security policy. And you got to step up to the next administration and make sure you shape their thinking. This is the dominant branch of government. You know, I say that, I apologize for saying it that way, but I teach American government for the last 10 years, and that's what you are. So good luck in your deliberations.
Lots of luck in the senior year, Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you.